I'm Huples Cat. Welcome to this Human Caused Climate Change video. Not controversial because it's fact. We looked at the investment bank JP Morgan's view of climate change in a recent video, and it's linked at the end of this one. It was a fascinating look at how to make money, or at least not lose money, in an increasingly climate unfriendly world. But what do actuaries think about it? People that insure insurers. Let's take a deep dive into what they think. But before we do, I want to point out something. A lot of preppers and a lot of human beings actually have a blind spot about human-caused climate change because it's awful and the facts are terrible, and it seems best to ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist. This is fundamentally not what prepping is about. Prepping looks at high-impact, low-risk events and sees what you can reasonably do to mitigate or avoid them. Human-caused climate change is a high-impact event that is high probability. It's not a black swan when we have floods and tornadoes, and it's no surprise that yet again in 2025 we're running out of fresh drinking water for ourselves, our poor animals, and our crops.
Hydro-Quebec says one of its water reservoirs is less than half full, but there is no cause for concern.
At least 14 people are now confirmed dead from floods and landslides in South Korea.
And as you can see, it is bone dry.
So what do actuaries actually do? Well, I'm not going to give you a lesson on that, but I will tell you they deal with uncertain but catastrophic risks. But where it's financially viable, they will help insure for some of those risks, thus making a profit. Most actuaries, like most investment banks, are now very much assessing climate change risks. Like myself, they tend to use worst case scenarios. The glass is neither half full nor half empty, but about to shatter and break and cut you. Do you have bandages? The introduction to this report does a reasonable job laying out the effects in broad terms of a rising average global temperature. But while mentioning that 2023 was the hottest year on record, it of course does not mention that 2024 was hotter. JP Morgan stated that 2025 should technically be cooler than 2024, which is a key to assessing risk. Whether you're an actuary or not, if 2025 is the hottest year on record, then we and our planet are in imminent risk of disaster. This is a key data point for everyone on the Earth. The fact that most preppers are ignoring it is a shame. Okay, they say we've had huge progress. Well, not really. And can we avoid a +2 centigrade rise? Well, JP Morgan states quite clearly that +2.7 as a minimum is baked in. There's nothing we can do about it, whatever we try and do now. And huge progress, well, it depends how you mark it. Over a very short time span, human use of energy in all forms has risen, and use of all sources is increasing year on year. Fossil fuel use and deforestation is increasing every year. So there has been zero progress. In fact, we're in a worse predicament than ever. Every year that goes by, the situation is worse. This should lead you, whether you're an actuary or not, to be very concerned. To perhaps overcome the somewhat optimistic interpretation so far, give us a gloomy quote. The quote is wrong. Our world does know exactly what it is doing and where it is heading, and currently civilization will very much crash and burn in the very near future. I'm not talking about 2050 or 2100, I'm talking about the early 2030s, a few years from now. Okay, so far I'm not impressed, but there are some nuggets ahead, so let's stick with it. Scientists do know why. It is fossil fuel use and tipping points being tipped. Also bear in mind we're also increasing emissions every year and have failed utterly for decades to stop increasing them, despite a lot of money being spent on window dressing. This is true, but all predictions other than the worst ones have for decades now been underestimating the effects. The worst predictions seem to be the most accurate, and yet people cling to the magic of carbon capture, which is not a technology we have. JP Morgan showed this and again presented many very unlikely forecasts rather than focus on the most likely outcome. That is the one based on historical data. We exceeded the 1.5 centigrade barrier in 2023 and 2024, and most governments currently are abandoning net zero in favour of short-term economics. These programs were woefully inadequate anyway. When we talk of carbon budgets, these do not exist. We cannot add more carbon dioxide starting now if we wish to avoid catastrophic civilization failure within a few years, and yet we will be doing so. Now this is mainly true, but we do know science and there is no extra carbon dioxide to be added as we have already dumped far too much into the atmosphere. We are already above 1.5 centigrade and 7 of 9 tipping points have already tipped or are about to tip. Ignoring that for insurance purposes is like giving life insurance to a £500 man who is 80 years of age, diabetic, smokes, has stage 4 heart disease, is on dialysis and has Parkinson's disease. Still, the point about tipping cascades here is very valid. We don't know if tipping one will tip the rest of them, but we do know we're pretty much tipping 7 of them for sure. But this is true. Famine, migration, war, disease, etc. And they will cover these later on, but very, very briefly and quite optimistically in a lot of ways. Now to get to the tofu of the briefing. Basically, a hotter world makes bad events happen more often and with more intensity. The 1-in-a-year floods become 1-in-10-year floods, and insurance rates need to rise or policies have to be cancelled. Black swan events have been well modelled for climate change and are to be expected. They're white swan events now. Massive increases in atmospheric water vapour have already happened. So insuring floods is more risky now than in 2020 and will be more risky in 2030 than now. This means for the rest of us we better relocate now and prepare for multiple black swans coming over our soon to be breached seawalls. And yet most people are not doing this. Yes, insurance rates will rise, they already are, well above inflation. They already are, and become increasingly unavailable to those at most risk from wildfire, drought and floods. They already are. This alone will harm the economy and cause migration inland. Please note here they mention pension schemes. Most people don't think of this. I do. I'm retired. My pension is dependent on investments that my pension fund makes for me. A lot of investments are in insurance. A lot of investments are in the oil industry. JP Morgan better showed how climate change is shoving this curve towards the right and increasing the intensity and frequency of these risks to insurers. Currently we are accelerating these attacks on our environment. Labelling them services does make people think we're not animals nor at risk from the extinction of these services as they decline. They are declining. I love the title on this one, Uncertainty. Look at it. 2024 was hotter. The last decade has been the hottest in human history and increasingly hot. Science shows why. There is absolutely no uncertainty about what's going on here. None. Yes, all possible effects, but ongoing and increasing removal of forests and consumption of fossil fuels is the main driver here. These arguments could mean that you don't do anything because of El Nino, you just wait it out. It also could mean that if we add sulfur fuels back into diesel fuel for cargo ships, things will get better. However, neither of these effects really affects the climate as much as we do. When we talk about 0.1 or 0.2 centigrade drop compared to a 1.5 centigrade and increasing rise, it's doing something but not a lot. Sadly for actuaries, it's going to get much busier as global averages, land and sea temperatures continue to rise. It's going to get much busier for all of us. It's going to get much worse for all of us. The more money you have, the more wealth you have, the more you can insure yourself and prevent the effects of climate change for a period of time. But it's coming for all of us. These are interesting factoids. I'm fairly sure 2024 and now in 2025 are going to cost the actuaries and the insurers much more than $1 billion US. I'm not quite sure how they figured this one out. However, also remember that individuals and governments pay way more in damages than the actuaries are paying. If you're concerned about your taxes and big government, human-caused climate change should be right up there with things you demand the government fixes. Now this should frighten you. We're increasing our fossil fuel emission. At the same time, we're now starting to decrease green energy investments. We cannot remove any greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. We've tipped 7 of 9 tipping points. Equilibrium climate sensitivity means that we cause a runaway heating event or kill life in our oceans. Neither is good for humanity's prospects, and actuaries cannot insure these risks. JP Morgan said 2.7 degrees rise, but our actuaries have given ranges of 2.5 to 4 centigrade as likely. They base this on a 66 to 100% likelihood. They don't explain this, so being optimistic, 2.5 centigrade is 100% certain. This is in line with likely outcomes predicted by modelling. This will mean 20% more water vapour. Currently there's 10% more, hence all the flooding we're having. Here they throw all the models available at us. Clearly it's grim. In fact, it's very grim. They suggest perhaps using Hanson's plus 4.8 model for insurance rates. Maybe, but I'd suggest plus 6 to 7 by 2100 looking at this. However, we're sliding gracefully towards this prospect, so rates will also gradually rise year by year, as will refusals to insure, as will human suffering. Clearly the Earth's current governments are not in any reasonable way focused on the likely outcomes, and nor are most insurers. Stable thinking is a trap. It will be better next year. It's been this bad before. Most probably it will get worse and worse and worse, unlike anything we've ever experienced in human history, and technology probably won't be able to save us. The known unknown section is a fast overview of current climate science. Clearly it's going to be awful, but will it cause human extinction, or at least a failure of insurers to make a profit? Currently, oceans, as science predicted, appear to be absorbing carbon dioxide, but this may soon be unavailable. They fill up. They acidify. Now, if the oceans acidify, this is also very bad news for most life on Earth, including me and you. We don't live in oceanic vents. However, currently we're removing wetlands and mangrove swamps as fast as we can. Fish farms. We're reducing fauna of all kinds, from whales to small fish. Many of them are becoming extinct in our oceans and seas as we try to feed 8 billion great apes. What? We're removing wildlife and wildlands at an accelerating rate. Wildfires and droughts are helping us do this, so to claim these are possible saviours given what we're doing is kind of crazy. Deforestation of the Amazon and elsewhere is extremely real. This one is fun and has been looked at length by our entertainment industry, and for me didn't seem a good option. That is not stopping reality starting to copy it though. Basically, to mine, produce, pump sufficient coolers into the atmosphere is way beyond us, is very, very dangerous, and is unlikely to work because of various mechanisms. Still, if we use nuclear weapons on some volcanoes, this might temporarily slightly cool the planet for a year or two, and then we have to deal with the radiation. Clouds. I don't know about you, but living under clouds makes me kind of depressed, so I don't like this option anyway. However, locally clouds are being used to help, but overall will not avoid global temperature rises or indeed famines from droughts. Cloud seeding has very localized uses and is extremely intensive in using carbon dioxide to do it. Yes, this is true. Melting ice will absorb energy. Sadly, we can melt all of the Earth's ice and it won't help. In fact, it would make things very, very much worse. Covering the Earth with a massive solar shade would work, but is way beyond existing abilities or apparently desires of our government. Currently, the rising of temperatures is accelerating and we're doing little to nothing to stop the rise, let alone stabilise it or reduce it. Science suggests to me that we are in serious problems by 2032. No return? Worst case is turning the Earth into a sort of a Venus which is not survivable. Even best cases are apocalyptic for human civilization and perhaps survival, and I will point out that Earth into Venus is actually unlikely, as is Earth becoming a snowball Earth again. Science. Look it up. Climate science is really interesting. The actuaries cover tipping points, but very, very briefly. But there are 9 of these that have been actually identified, and 7, not 5, have already crossed safe thresholds. It might already be too late to avoid catastrophe. The position in July of 2025 is far worse for our tipping points than it was when this image was produced in 2021. That is how fast things are now moving. The SHTF of high impact, high probability human caused climate change is here. Now this is true, but we're doing none of these things. We're making it worse, and previous attempts have not slowed even the rise of emissions in any significant way. This is very much like trying to use a teaspoon to empty a bathtub with the tap on full. It's going to overflow. Everything is connected, so one of these tipping points would affect India, China and Pakistan in catastrophic ways. They've all got nuclear weapons and don't really get on. Would India, Pakistan and China just shrug this off? Or would it lead to demands for water and land triggering war? To be decided, as it is going to happen. This is not a maybe. Across the planet, wildfires rage on as we continue to burn more and more fossil fuels to avoid short-term economic pain. Again in 2023, the actuaries were hoping for the best, despite claiming to be insuring for the worst. 2 degrees rise by 2050? Likely much sooner than 2050. As we said in the JP Morgan video, 2023 and 2024 saw average global temperatures rise above 1.5 centigrade, and this graph actually shows that this change, this rising in global temperatures, both land and oceanic, is accelerating and is not a stable change. It is all connected, and all of it individually is both unreplaceable and threatened, or made worse by current human activity. Can we fix this? Highly unlikely. I wouldn't insure human civilization right now. So social fragility is threatened by the direct and indirect effects of climate change. This isn't a problem for 2100 or 2050, but for 2025, as we're increasingly seeing. The actuaries then look at some of the systematic risks of this, and they are well worth reading and planning for as an individual. Emerging infectious diseases. This is not bioweapons or vaccines, but nature mutating faster at higher temperatures and with decreasing space between different species. We have seen just how resilient our health services are and our economy is and our people are in the great pandemic of 2020, which was actually historically a very mild one. Where does your food come from? Can you grow your own? Can you grow all of the food you need? Can your local community grow it for you? Eating meat is bad for you and animals and the environment despite the vast amounts of money spent convincing people otherwise. The science is clear on that, so you might want to transition to a plant-based diet as much as you can. It's also going to be much easier to grow plants without any inputs than to grow cattle or rabbits. Mass migration has not yet occurred. If millions move northwards, tens of millions, and we're also faced with internal migration away from the coasts, your country may well be affected, but will your local area be affected, and how so? Trying to seal the borders isn't going to work. It's attractive with low numbers and it seems to be a strong policy, but it won't actually work. Where does your water come from? Can you provide safe drinking water for years? Can you water your crops throughout the growing season and for year after year? Again, think locally. Storing rainwater is great if it rains dependably. With the current global climate change models and effects that we're actually seeing, nowhere has dependable rainwater. Now we've known for some time that on the hottest, most humid days, everybody will get killed if they can't get to air conditioning. This could result in large numbers of deaths. It's something I'm personally concerned about. I'm also really concerned about the fact the air conditioner hasn't been installed, and I've been trying to get it installed for 3 years, but there you go. Failure of economic services is actually a sign of failure of society. Can you keep cool if the electricity fails? How at risk is your location from heat and humidity? The very young and the very old and the disabled are going to be at severe risk from this, and an increasing risk from this as time goes on. Derailment risk actually means society fails and cannot respond adequately. Wildfires will not be fought. Floods will not be responded to. Snow and ice storms and heat events not responded to in any reasonable way. You should plan to be your own first responder as we voyage into this horrible future. Don't worry about these complex diagrams too much. Actuaries love this type of thing. The loops show how one thing prepared for doesn't mean it won't cause other issues, so you actually have to prepare for everything. You can't prepare for everything, but you can prepare for most things by taking smart and sensible prepping precautions. So if you're an actuary, you cannot insure against all risks, but you need to insure against basic risks. Have you insured for your basic human-caused climate change risks where you are? Or have you allowed yourself to be convinced it's unreal and you don't need to worry about it? Or even worse, that you can't do anything about it, so there's no point trying. As ever, our actuaries end their briefing on a positive note. Most people do this. They always throw something positive at the end. In this case, one that's entirely unlikely to happen. Yes, all of these are being done or researched, but in 2025 we are burning more fossil fuels every year than the previous year, and our Earth's temperature is rising faster every year. And no technology exists. The ones we're working on actually produce a huge amount of carbon dioxide. The objectives are nice, but again, how to achieve them with our current economic policies and current individual consumption of gasoline, energy, air travel and meat. Net zero is abandoned. It didn't stop the rise anyway. The entire economic system causes climate change, and we see no sign of that altering without civilization collapsing first. We've failed to stop the rise at 1.5 centigrade. We know we must stop carbon dioxide and methane, etc. rising every year. We know we must aggressively, right now in 2025, today, stop the rise. Having achieved that, we know we have to lower the amounts in the atmosphere. I see little to no chance of either of those things happening without a huge amount of global violence, i.e. a global war that actually smashes civilization to the point where civilization can no longer function. So thanks for watching. Prepare locally and mitigate as much as you can. Enjoy your life, but do so in low carbon emitting ways as far as you can. The future is an undiscovered country, but it's coming at you and your loved ones faster than you may know. The actuaries painted a pretty bad probable picture, while actually showing a terrible picture is definite. If you have any comments that actually are sane on this video, please feel free to put them in.
There are 9 planetary boundaries that we as animals must not pass through. We've passed 7 of the 9 boundaries now. If we pass 1, we should be scared stiff. We've passed 7. That's the science that's come in, and we're still arguing about pipelines and whether we should leave stuff in the ground.
And I will again implore you, despite the fact I get no views and almost no AdSense revenue from any of this, these factors are absolutely critical to you and your family. It's hotter, it's getting hotter, it's not going to stop getting hotter, it's going to get worse every year, and you need to look at where you live. You need to get your local area producing food, however you manage to do that, and you need to be able to consistently gather clean water and treat it on a huge scale. You can't rely on your municipal government, you can't rely on your provincial or state governments, you can't rely on your federal government, and you can't rely on world governments. All of these are absolutely 100% committed to the economy as it is. There is going to be no transition to green energy. There has been no transition to green energy. You're on your own. It's going to get really bad. Buckle up and get ready for it. Doodles! This has been a Gracie Fat Cat production 2025.